That's, you know.
Yeah, I think it just always depends. You know, one of the jobs I do, I work here in Concord at the women's prison as a case counselor, and so it's case by case. You know, so you could live in a community and work in a community, and it could be okay, or it could not be okay, and you just decide I'm going to work there and make my money there and go live in the suburbs. So, I mean, it always depends. But you know what it really depends on? The people that live in the community. Are the people in the community willing to do some work to make a change? Or are they not? I mean, for me, that's what it comes down to, is the people that I'm around, whether it's my family, whether it's my co-workers, whether it's the NAACP. You know, are we willing to get together to make some improvements or not? That don't make us bad either way. I'm just saying, what are we doing?
What are we going to do?
Yeah, what are we going to do? Yeah.
So I want to hear from somebody who we have not heard from tonight.
Yeah, that's what he wants to do.
Go ahead. You had mentioned that you're involved in the effort for reparations. I think that is so important because on a national level, the reality needs to be acknowledged.
Yes, ma'am.
And then it makes the denial a little bit more difficult. And I think that's kind of where it lives. I mean, the country needs to acknowledge the reality and instead of trying to cast it as something else.
Agreed.
And so for that reason alone, that is so important, I think.
I agree. I think that, again, it's about repair. And so, if we make an effort to make things better, it makes things better for everyone.
Right.
That's the
Right.
point. So it's not just for people that look like me. It's for people. You know, if in fact there was some injustice and we're making some effort to make amends, I think that's a good thing.
And I think that this is also something Superintendent Vargas from Manchester Schools said to us when we had our executive committee for the NAACP Manchester chapter. We had a retreat. We were doing our strategic planning for the year. So we had him in, and we had Anthony Poor from Humanities Council in, because we wanted to hear, so what are the issues that they're seeing from their roles? And one of the things that Superintendent Vargas said to us is just what Brenda just said. You know, you really want to attack the issue not just from the people of color perspective, but lift all boats.
It does.
Take that perspective, and you get more support from a broader coalition of folks to actually be able to accomplish things rather than just lasering in on the people of color who are affected.
Well, you know, being honest about history, not just in terms of race, but in history in general. Right now, I know that in the 50s that the government was very much involved in what was put in textbooks that go into public school. And I don't know exactly what that looks like now. But as you say, there's a lot of truth left out or totally misrepresented in what children are taught in school.
Yep.
And it's like if there were an agreement for reparations, it's like, okay, this is what has happened. This is the truth. So now we need to fix all of the things, you know, work on education and all of those things. But if it's not acknowledged at the top, then you'll end up putting out fires forever.
Well, you know, the truth of the matter is, ma'am, it starts from the bottom. That's how power is really worked, from the bottom. We have to organize from the bottom and make the people at the top do what we want. You know, other than that, we kind of keep getting what we currently have, which is them doing what they want to
do.
They're running amok, actually.
They are.
Yeah, so, I mean, you know, so we have some responsibility for our children, the next generation, and a legacy. You know, what is it that we're going to leave behind? You know, this is on our watch. Everything that's going on right now is on our watch. So what are we going to do about it?
Well, come on myself.
I'm not suggesting anyone has an answer. I'm just saying,
What's the question?
I'm just saying this, everything that's happening now is happening on our watch. You know.
Well, this is kind of a parallel thing, but I worked for a number of years in a Native American community up in the Arctic, and I think part of what is going on there is that their curriculum isn't relevant. They've had multiple generations of forced assimilation and just complete insensitivity to the history and reality. And young people can't invest in school because it doesn't represent them. And it's kind of forcing this Western education down their throats. And, you know, as a teacher, it's very frustrating. And you're seeing these people just kill themselves slowly. It's this slow genocide. At one point it was overt, but it's like they don't have power. And I think
yeah, but I'm suggesting that it's kind of happening to all of us. I'm telling you, I work at that prison, and I see women after women leave, come back, leave, come
They
back.
don't die in between.
And die in between. Yes, we had 3 women that, you know, died in the last couple of, I want to say weeks. But, I mean, you know, so I'm just saying we all connected in this harm that's happening in our country. And it's a great country, but we all connected in the current situation. And I think it's good to take in movies like this and you know, see what's happening in Baltimore and wonder what's going on in Manchester and Concord and Portsmouth and Nashua.
So some of the similarities I saw between the film and Manchester, like that mirroring project between the police and youth that happens in Nashua and in Manchester.
Yeah.
And it's had some good results,
Yes.
some very good results. It struck me that there was no bus service. We were talking about redlining in 1930s, but there's no bus service going in there.
Disinvestment.
That's right. So that people, not just schools, but mere
To
transportation,
jobs.
so
Yeah.
people can have jobs.
Right.
And so kind of, you know, understanding why people are on the corner selling drugs.
You know what the investments in? The police and the overtime. And that's why that selectman got it. He hit it. The criminal justice system is so useless in fixing this, but it all falls down onto it. That's all. Let's do mandatory minimums for gun possession. Let's put people in prison longer, and it doesn't work. And you've got to invest in education. You've got to invest in infrastructure. You've got to invest in jobs. And they don't do all that, and they're like, well, we got this criminal justice system, it'll fix it, and it never does. And I thought that was the big message of the movie, is the criminal justice system is useless, but that's where we throw all the money. Police overtime, the everything. That
But
goes
if we
to-
think about that, we do that, but we do that for what reason? To protect the rich.
Oh, yeah.
So we do that to make sure that the people who have a lot of money keep it and are separated from the people who don't.
Well, I think it's also, reaction is more, it's easier than being proactive. Because the real
Reactive,
solution
criminal
is a
justice
long-term,
system is reactive, yeah.
and you have to be proactive about it.
So I agree with that
Yeah.
to some extent, but yet in the movie, I also heard, why aren't the police stopping this? Why aren't they now? They can't, but they're expected to. And they're expected to have more out there. So I mean, it's kind of a,
It's kind of all tied in together. You think
Yeah.
about the first thing that gets cut in the government budget, education, right? Because if you keep people dumb, they don't get educated. You don't fuel the knowledge and the know-how. So then you have overtime for police, because they think that that's going to solve the problem. It doesn't solve the problem. I was a dispatcher in 911 for 10 years, and I felt this video is very accurate as to what you see on all different sides. And it's like you throw a police officer out there because it's easier to pay you extra time. But a lot of it, and it came down to, oh, we're going to give you 12-hour shifts. Well, it's really not 12-hour shifts. It's 14 and 16 because they're so busy throughout the day they can't write reports.
Right.
They've
And
got
you got to
more
write the
stuff.
report.
And you have to write the
Law.
report because it's the law.
It's the law.
And you can't remember, you can't wait till tomorrow to write it because then it's going to be gone.
Right.
You know? So
Well,
it's
because
like-
stuff is still happening.
Right.
Yeah.
But if you keep people in the government's eyes, if you keep them dumb and uneducated, then they don't grow and you still have the power. So if we were to put our efforts into education, we can actually educate people to be better, to do better,
Exactly. To build better.
To be
to build better.
empowered.
To build better, to create better. I mean, just better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was interesting to me too, the effect that Mr. C had.
Yeah.
Yeah,
When he was missing.
that's why Eric's here.
Yeah.
And there's not enough of those. There's not enough Mr. C's in the world, unfortunately.
One of the things that was really poignant to me was one of the, I guess, older men. There was a scene where he was crying on Mr. C's lap, and that made me think, you know, Mr. C's, he's the priest.
Yeah.
He's the chaplain for that community.
He's the healer.
He's the healer.
He's
He's
the
the healer.
healer.
That's it.
That's it.
It's
He was
interesting,
also a
even.
corrections officer.
Yeah, he was that too.
Right.
And father.
And to add to
And
that,
grandfather.
And he was the financier.
what was really interesting was that Mr. C, you saw Mr. C praying, but even at the funeral, you didn't see a pastor. At least that was identified even though
No.
Mr. C was the community priest.
So, I think a lot of it gets back to the sense of community
Yeah.
that
Yes.
people feel, and going back, because, you know, education takes place, you know, school education takes place outside of the home and outside of the neighborhood.
In the
But
community.
But it's going back, and, I mean, you know, it's inspiring, the sense of community that people
It is.
had. I mean, you know, you know, there's a lot of people who would love to have a sense of community like that.
But the sense of community is connected to our humanity.
Correct,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so when some people are not looked at as human, then you take away their humanity, but you also take away yours.
That's right.
And then that sense of community can't be felt. And we can't create and we can't build together because somehow I'm not seen as human. It's just phenomenal. But in the meantime, while that's happening, somebody's getting rich.
Yep.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
You know, very rich, I should say.
Yeah.
Well, and it's funny too because you're talking about transportation. If you look at one of the biggest things that was, like when we had the recent election, everybody go vote, and even like people like Uber were stepping up to get people rides. It's just another form of control to not get you education to school,
Yep.
to not get you ways
Get
to
your job.
do normal everyday things, and it's another way to
In
keep
the
that
community.
control in certain areas.
That's why Pastor C had his sign-up list,
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Sign up list for
bus
the
fare.
bus there.
Yes, but I don't use the word community when I'm thinking Mr. C and the younger police officer there who's talking to the little boy.
Boy, oh.
I think of caring because I think it's a magical thing that if you have been a victim of trauma and someone spends like 15 minutes saying, I value you, I care about you, and that's what, you know, all those guys who were hanging out around Mr. C could be doing this, they could be doing all sorts of things, but they got like 15 minutes of someone cares about me, and that
Yeah.
That
That made
was-
all the difference.
that was amazing. Yeah, and people crave that.
Yeah, they do.
They really crave that,
Especially if they haven't had it
especially.
at
But
home.
even
Sure,
here,
which they don't, because their parents are been shot, they're gone. Anybody else who hasn't said
Yeah.
anything? Yeah, yes.
I noticed two things in this movie, and this is also written in the movie, it's like, against being simplistic, but two things I noticed that are worth mentioning is an unemployment rate of 50%. That's a mass thing, you know. What are you going to do if you got that? And a micro thing that I noticed that was part of the same thing is Mr. C knew to look out over at that guy and said, I bet you didn't have breakfast. And that just struck me like, you didn't have breakfast? I've never not had breakfast. But he knew. And then I said, oh my God, that guy didn't have breakfast. So,
Lack of food and lack of sleep are a terrible thing.
You guys mind if I take a picture of you?
Sure, go ahead.
So curious, the three of you were all involved with the Greater Manchester branch of the NAACP.
We are.
So I'm just sort of
Kind of happened that way.
if there's you mentioned a planning retreat and talking about education and some of these other things. So I'm curious if there's some things that are going on that we should know about.
Mr. Spokesman, Mr. President.
Sure.
You got your membership forms on you just in case anybody.
That's
wants
what I
to
like
sign up.
about Arnie.
Arnie, you are a good member of the, he's also a member of
I'll take names.
No, but,
as
what-
treasurer, I'll take your name.
You know, one of the things the branch wants to do is to create you know, we're using the name Saturday School, and you know we probably have to change the name because no child's gonna want to go to something that's called school
On Saturday.
Yeah. So, but the idea of the project is to actually be able to create a space where marginalized students can actually be able to be provided with the educational opportunities that they currently are not being provided for by the school system. And out of that, we're open to also be able to give, because one of the things that Superintendent Vargas also told us about was the lack of access to musical instruments and the arts, and also lack of access to transportation in Manchester. So being able to help with those from a direct service point of view, being able to help with some of that as well.
And
So it's going to take a lot of heavy lift. It's going to take some heavy lifting. It's going to take some work, but that's something that we're committed to doing. And then the second thing, which is it's more on the technical side, but really it's very important, is to really work on improving our communications.
How so? Exactly.
Exactly. We put together a job description. We have the resources we're going to hire a social media and communications intern, because one thing we also have to do is it's also part. I think the job of the NAACP is to advocate and to also keep the public informed about what's happening, ways you can connect, and then also to let the community know about the work of the NAACP, so we can continue to let people know that we're there for them.
And the other thing we're really working on, which is really connected to that, is really increasing not just the membership, but increasing young people's involvement, so that they, because they're going to inherit something, and we want them to participate in what they're going to inherit, so that they can help create it in a way. But you know, my son said something to me that, you know, I just happen to remember when I was coming up, they used to tell us to turn that TV off, and you know, get from in front of that TV, you know. And he said, but now everybody walks around with one, you know. You watch YouTube videos, Netflix, I mean, and nobody is telling you, I mean, a little bit.